Started following your lead too, Lukie, and going on YouTube just late last year as well. So if anyone wants to check it out, feel free.
Thank you, man. It's really cool. We're just one big boxing family. I want to get the first preview under the way of Brock Jarvis and Keith Thurman. What is the vibe? What's the feeling down there? And also, is there a chance like Keith Thurman's old? Is there any chance that like he loses this fight?
Wow, Luke, I mean, I imagine the impression in America is very much like the impression here, and it's the elephant in the room. This fight is just weird. It's a weird fight. It's a matchup we never saw coming. It's a matchup that seemingly Brock Jarvis doesn't deserve on any level. And I never thought we'd see Keith Thurman ever fight again. Can Keith lose this fight? I think it's a fight where literally any possible outcome is as likely to happen as the other. I mean, Keith's had 4 fights in 8 years. He's coming off the longest period between fights from the Mario Barrios fight at 3 years and 1 month. At fight night, he's almost 37 years old. Brock Jarvis in his last 4 or 5 fights has fought at escalatingly high weights from 122 to 158 was his last fight. Presumably this fight's at 154. I mean, I'm just listing a lot of the weirdness, Luke. You tell me. Like, it seems to me that any outcome is possible here. In terms of a breakdown, I can give you what I think might happen, but that's one of those ones where I think we might be surprised no matter what does happen.
I mean, to me, I only saw Jarvis once. He fought in Fresno. He's the classic, looks really good getting off the bus. Skill set doesn't match his physique, in my opinion, but he's a draw. And it felt like when Liam Paro beat him, that was going to kind of be the end of him on a global scale. And then, like you said, with Keith Thurman, I'm not even sure what Keith Thurman is at this point. He had the fight with Tim Tszyu, couldn't make it to the fight. And I'm kind of surprised the fight's happening this soon because, like, it doesn't feel like there's any form of a buildup to this fight.
Yeah, mate. That's what I mean. It's just the only word I can really use to accurately describe it is just weird. It's a weird fight. Both guys are at weird points in their careers. The matchup doesn't really make any sense on paper. It seemingly is going to happen, but as you pointed out, you've seen Brock Jarvis in Fresno that time where he fought Frias Rodriguez, and mate, that fight could have been stopped in the first round quite easily. Brock Jarvis was on skates. He was so lucky to get away with that victory. Conversely, when he stopped Frias Rodriguez in the fifth round, Rodriguez was nowhere near as hurt as Brock was. So, as Aussies, we do complain a lot about biased officiating when we go overseas, but that's one where we have to put a hand up and go, well, look, we probably got lucky on that one. So, Brock could have another couple of losses on his record too. It's going to be super interesting. But I mean, what's your gut feel more interestingly to me, Luke, on Keith Thurman? Like 4 fights in 8 years says it all. Like what's the word on the street in your part of town?
Well, I don't know any in-depth details, but I just get when a guy doesn't fight that often, I get that the passion's kind of gone. This is someone that I feel like after he got married and after he had some big fights that burn money, the quotable Keith Thurman that we kind of knew who was a great soundbite kind of went away. And he's kind of just been, I almost want to say like a businessman. Like it seems like he's waiting around for big fights, but I don't really see I don't really see what he's doing, and I don't see that passion to be the great fighter he once was. So for me, I see a guy who is a great opportunity for him to make some money. He'll entertain fights to be in the mix, but I don't see a guy chasing legacy anymore.
Yeah, that's totally true. And there's really not much to gain for Keith from this fight. Like Brock Jarvis is relatively unknown overseas. He's relatively unknown in Australia, to be totally honest. Outside of the actual boxing hardcore in Australia, which there's maybe only 5 or 10,000 of, no one knows who Brock Jarvis is outside of the little bubble. But if Keith loses this fight, and he's spoken about having to get his get back fight for years now, well, this is his get back. He's probably getting paid really well. He's main eventing. It's a $70 pay-per-view in Australia, if you can believe it, which is just absolutely outrageous. But if he loses this fight, it is like, this is disastrous. This is career ending. If Brock loses, uh, he lost to a former world champion who now is going to presumably go on to fight either Nikita or Tim Tszyu. So it's upwards and onwards for him. And if he wins, it's a former world champion on his record, regardless of the condition and the high watermark of Keith's career seemingly is going to come in underneath that. So, but it's still a former world champion on the record. So I feel like Keith's got a ton to lose here if it goes wrong. And, we see guys look old overnight, and 3 years since the Barrios fight, it's certainly a possibility, I think.
Okay, I'm going to take two more fight previews and then we're going to ramble about some undercards. Kenshiro Taraji versus, oh my God, I'm going to say these names so weird. Segigo Yuri